Good evening and welcome. My name is Erica Bondurant-Frapatch, and I am Acting Executive Director of the Clarice Smith Performing Arts Center at the University of Maryland. I am joined on screen by Ronya-Lee Anderson, who will be moderating this evening's Art Citizenship Talk, Revelations by Black Women in Dance. The Clarice's Artist Partner Programs believe that artists can be catalysts for community change, leadership, and empowerment. We have chosen to begin the effort of building bridges across cultures by acknowledging what has been buried and honoring the truth. I am coming to you now from my home in Silver Spring, Maryland, on the ancestral lands of the Piscataway people, who were among the first in the Western Hemisphere to encounter European colonists.
As members of the University of Maryland community, we honor the enslaved men, women, and children who were integral to the initial creation and continued sustainment of the university. We pay respects to these and other elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, immigration, and settlement that bring us together here today.
In addition to acknowledging both the land we occupy and the labor it took to create our built world, the Clarice's Artist Partner Programs are committed to moving beyond acknowledgement and partnering with artists who are exploring issues of social justice, reparations, and racism to try and affect change. We believe art shouldn't exist in a vacuum and that creative endeavors should lead to new ways we live in the world. We hope to amplify the voices of Black artists because Black stories matter. Black women matter. Black bodies matter. Tonight is about that amplification.
Tonight's event attempts to hold space for the experiences, stories, and musings of 4 very unique and gifted Black women steeped in the field of dance. Tonight's conversation was birthed out of the upcoming Black Light Summit on March 4th through 6th. In keeping with the mission of the summit, you have come here as you are to see these artists as they are, and we invite you to not only imagine, but also act on what can be tonight and moving forward.
Thank you, Ronya-Lee. I am going to join our virtual audience now. I'm honored to be able to witness the conversation that is about to happen. And to my fellow audience members, as you listen to these amazing Black women, please put your questions for them in the chat, and our guest experience team member will relay them to Ronya-Lee and the panelists. Bye-bye.
Okay, now we're all here in the space. Wonderful. So again, I'm Ronya-Lee Anderson, really honored to be moderating this panel, or should I say facilitating a dialogue with these wonderful women. I don't want to spend any time telling you about myself. You can Google me if you'd like, and I'm sure that you probably already have Googled some of the women on the panel. So I'm not going to ask them to introduce themselves in the traditional way. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves as they arrive to this space tonight. So kind of where you are tonight, and I'm going to offer you an I am statement to kind of begin. I'm going to invite Kahina Haynes to start. So I am, and then just tell us whatever you want us to know about you tonight.
Thank you so much, Ronya, and good evening, everyone. My name is Kahina Haynes, and I am a daughter tonight. I'm a daughter to every aspect of the word. I am really, really leaning lately on family and fellowship, and ever grateful for that, especially in these times. Grateful for this space to be here as I am. Thank you so much for that opportunity. And I also serve as the executive director at the Dance Institute of Washington, and I am also a dancer.
Thank you so much, Kahina. Michaela, I'll invite you to share.
Hello, everyone. I am Michaela Taylor. I am a creator. I'm a choreographer and also artistic director / founder of the TL Collective, which is a contemporary based dance company in Los Angeles. And I'm honored to be with you all today.
Thank you, Michaela. Candace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Scarborough. I am a performer, choreographer, and Gaga teacher living in Baltimore, Maryland. And I graduated from the University of Maryland in 2012.
Thank you, Candace. Shanice.
Hi, everyone. I am Shanice Mason. I am a sister, a daughter, a friend, along with being an artist, an educator, and an arts administrator. And I'm just super grateful to be here in conversation with you all tonight.
Thank you, Shanice. So this has been quite the week. Nina Simone's birthday was on Sunday, the 21st of February. I'm a huge fan of Nina Simone, and I know there are probably some other fans out there. But also 15 years ago yesterday, science fiction writer Octavia Butler passed away. And in a lot of her work, there are Black female leads, almost always. And these female leads, they time travel, they move between the present, the past, and the future. They straddle worlds. And in thinking about Octavia Butler and those types of characters in her work, it makes me think about how Black women are often asked to be present, past, future, straddle worlds, move between spaces, shapeshift, and inhabit so many different ways of being. And so I'm curious to hear about how you in your work have had to do some of that shapeshifting, straddling. You can kind of take it in any direction that feels good for you.
Well, when thinking about that, I automatically think about being present in each moment. And for me, that's directly connected to vulnerability. As I grow as an artist, as a choreographer, I am asked to really be open to nuances, to shifts in career, to shifts in my life. And obviously, we've had a major shift this past year, but I've noticed that I've become more adaptable, and my fear to be open and my fear to be vulnerable as a creator, as a human being, has started to subside the longer that I have worked. And so for me, that helps me be present. It helps me be able to quickly let go of whatever I had set or whatever I was focusing on and shift into another world or whatever is being asked of me in that moment. So it's something that I'm constantly struggling with and challenging myself with, but that's what makes it so thrilling, that I never truly master it, but it's an ongoing process.
I can piggyback off of that because I've been using the word present a lot in the last couple of weeks. So that really resonates with me, Michaela. And I think that allows me to really slow down and to really be purposeful in everything that I'm doing and not just taking on something just because and really being clear about who I am and what I really take into my body in all aspects and all directions and finding that clarity for myself.
I have a response. I'm thinking of this, and funny enough, in real time, as I'm trying to craft what I'm saying, I'm finding myself going through that struggle of like, okay, how am I crafting this? What words am I going to use? How do I make sure I'm really saying what I want to say? And all that keeps coming to my mind is that it is what Michaela is saying, is that it's really hard to do. And I just want to name that for a minute, because I'd love to say that I'm working on it, but I think for me, just being quite honest, the interconnected and kind of domino effect and the burden that I think has been placed particularly on Black women to show up in these ways, in these spaces, makes that very difficult, because how you show up is not just impacting you. It's often connected and directly impacting others. So I just find it really, really difficult. But I'm challenging that in real time. So yeah, I mean, there's no real point to it. I just felt I'd take the opportunity to be vulnerable, and share that, yeah, it is absolutely difficult to do, but I think it's important work, and it's important that we recognize those challenges.
Yeah, going off of that, and also something that Shanice said, it feels like I'm choosing between what it is I want, what I want for myself, and then what is expected. And it is a really hard thing to do, but kind of allowing myself to be in that space and to focus, or to focus on more what it is I want and what serves me going forward helps a little bit with that kind of like oscillating between different spaces.
Yeah. Thank you all for that. There's a lot there. I'm struck, Kahina, when you were talking about this idea of how you show up, and particularly as a Black woman, how you show up, how it impacts not just you, but there's like this ripple. I think you used domino.
Yes.
And so I'm just curious if we can unpack that some more, and invite everybody who'd like to also weigh in on that, on maybe particular instances of having showed up, and maybe for a minute thinking you were just showing up as you.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. It's funny. Funny that was that obvious. But no, you're absolutely right. I think that, I mean, just personally, I have experienced, this is anecdotal, but a number of times. I think I've been on a personal journey, I would say since high school, where I felt like something was off about how much I felt I needed to change myself to show up, especially in artistic spaces. I trained pre-professionally, so I was leaving high school, half day, and then going and train until that night, until dinner time. And so that was kind of my lived experience. And I didn't even realize that's what I was doing until college. Until an experience right before college, but ultimately continued into college. And I get into college and I start again challenging myself to, it's not about conforming necessarily. I don't even think that's the right word, but challenging myself to not feel I need to do anything extra, to be as I am, as we are. We're just not conditioned for that type of acceptance and for that type of grace as Black women, to give ourselves that type of generosity and accommodation. And so now, in sort of my current capacity, it's something that's really important to me, but I have struggled with it, to be honest, because there have been consequences. I've shown up to meetings with my hair a certain way, dressed a certain way. I've been scripted. I've been told I need to wear something more professional, like whatever that means. And things that I represent and that I'm responsible for have been negatively impacted because of those choices. So that's where the struggle then comes in, because how am I helping to change this if I'm just acquiescing, right, to these expectations? But then if I don't, I'm responsible for all of the ramifications. And so it's just, in terms of how we show up, I honestly don't have an answer. I can tell you on the certain days I wake up and I'm like, this is what it is. And there are consequences. And then some days I regrettably, to be honest, am a bit more considerate and cautious, but we shouldn't have to be. I don't even think those choices, there are people that live every day who don't have to make those choices. And that's the thing, right? Like that at the end of the day is what it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think that I've put a certain pressure on myself just in thinking about, stepping into certain environments, um, choreographing for certain communities, or knowing that there's going to be a certain audience that's watching, and knowing that um, am a, I'm a minority in that group. I put a pressure on myself to um, create something that may identify stereotypically. And I think that, I've had to really wrestle with that internally. How, what is, this is something we've talked about before, identity as a choreographer, as a Black woman, what do you bring into the space culturally? And I think that that's a question that I have subconsciously dealt with. And so because of that, there's a certain pressure when I show up in certain environments or in any environment, because I'm thinking about that in the back of my head. Um, what does this represent? I am representing a certain demographic. I am representing a Black female choreographer. So yes, I definitely have gone back and forth thinking about that question, just trying to fit in and also trying to be unique, and knowing that I'm automatically unique in certain environments. And what does that mean to me? What does that mean to others? The question that I've constantly gone back and forth about.
I'm going to jump in. I'm also going to try not to formulate my words. I'm going to talk in draft for a second, because I can feel it over here of like, oh, chill out, trying to do too much. But I'm going to like flip the question just a little bit and look at it from the perspective of how do I show up for my students who are predominantly Black, who are predominantly females. And who are also watching this talk tonight. Shout out to Ballet 1A from City Dance Dream. But how do I show up for them to show that you can be in draft, that you don't always have to have it together? And I think there's this high expectation for us as Black women to always come ready to go, ready to talk, ready to be. And really do that shape-shifting way at any given moment, which is exhausting. And who necessarily wants to do that? So for my students, I really try to show up like, yes, I'm ready. Yes, I'm ready to be here. But also we can change things depending on how we are, how we're feeling, and the things outside of us that may be influencing how we work right now and in this moment. And really going back to like that moment of being present and being purposeful, and not necessarily trying to put something on, and really work from the inside out.
Yeah, I really think about like playing into an expectation of what I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to show up, and letting that go, and letting myself just be who I am there in that moment. And it changes all of the time, and letting that be okay. That I'm not going to be the same one day as I am, and I shouldn't try and be the same. Just like Shanice is saying, we can change. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all of the responses. And it's curious that you flipped it, Shanice, to talk about your students, because what I was thinking about, particularly with Tina, is sort of the trickiness of your position, right? In that you are an executive director of a dance organization. And so you're operating and wearing one hat, but that your students are always watching it. Always. I mean, always. Yeah, and so and so just how you're navigating that. You can speak to that or not, but I just thought it was interesting that Shanice spoke about the relationship with her students and this idea of them watching her, which is a very good point. And I'm thinking about that for you as well.
Yeah, I think I would uplift 100% what Shanice is saying. I really make it a point to be as transparent with the students as possible without compromising their preparation, right? So I'm real to the point of other people are not going to accept this, and there might be consequences to showing up in this way, but you are empowered to do so, and don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Like so Dance Institute, our entire school is predominantly Black and Latinx populations. And we have to have very honest conversations about that. I think, and this is something I was thinking about too, as everyone was talking, this is having me think about spaces. So not just how we're showing up in the spaces, but the spaces themselves. Like, I'm just get real for a second. I love this wave of everyone trying to be every kind of space to everybody. Great. I love the intention behind that, but that's just not what it is. There are people need, I think a space looks different when it's predominantly white and trying to be equitable for Black people, for example, versus when it's where there's an intentional focus on an underrepresented population or group or what have you. Not one is not better or worse. They're just entirely different. And I'm just thinking about, I don't know, as we're talking about how we're this journey of showing up in spaces, I know for the students, it's really important that we expose them to all kinds of those spaces for this very reason, that transparency. We don't want them to be, blindsided, culture shock. They leave the IW and the rest of the world is just not like that. But they're grounded because, again, they've been exposed to the real. They see me running from meeting to meeting. They see me, frustrated sometimes. And they'll come into my office. They'll ask what's wrong, and I'll tell them. I will be very honest. And I just think that's so important. So that, to Shanice's point, they don't see this pressure cooker image of what's really not real, and they think that they need to ascribe to that, to something not real and not sustainable. So just breaking that, because that's definitely been a thing for generations, is, I think, working with students is paramount, and it's part of what's hopefully going to shift the culture, because the more security future generations have showing up as they are, I think it will have this sort of indirect educational outcome for for other populations. Because I just think that juxtaposition, of being shown what Black women look like and how they show up differently, as opposed to this image that we see all the time. So I try to allow my students to experience that and ask questions and interact with it. Sometimes they do it in a nice way. Sometimes they're teenagers, and that's totally fine. I'm here for all of it.
I love this. I appreciate too this idea of spaces and showing up differently in different spaces. I'm wondering if Candace and Michaela, others can weigh in too, but I'd love to hear from the two of you. First, perhaps about your experience having done work outside of the US. I know, Candace, with your work with Gaga, and Michaela, I know that you have traveled as well, the choreography and in performance. So maybe whichever one of you wants to go in first, but I would love to hear from both of you if possible.
I know.
Great.
Yes, and just really piggybacking off of what Kahina just said, I think that honesty, being candid, is very important for me as a performer and as a choreographer, and working outside of the US is the same deal. I think, in my work, there's a lot of freedom of expression. And this also, the idea also, what Shanice said earlier, kind of dancing from the inside out instead of the outside in, not being so affected by what others' opinions are, or even this idea of physically being impacted or moving in a more shallow way because you're thinking only this on the surface level, only the outside of my skin, but really going deep inside of the core and letting that come out. And I find that, when we're thinking in that way, even in the guided improv physically, I really get to see a shift in the space, identity come out in so many different people. And as a Black woman, as a Black choreographer, dancing and leading in that way, I think people are able to learn more about where I come from, the struggles that I've dealt with, the cultural struggles that I've dealt with, the lack of opportunity in some ways. I feel like when I dance, I am so liberated and so full of joy because I didn't have maybe as much opportunity growing and training as an artist. So I think people are really able to latch on and relate to that no matter where I am in the US or outside of the US. But there is a huge appreciation for that vulnerability. I feel like outside of the US, they really like to see the raw, stripped down emotion, I find, dancing outside of the US. And so, yeah, that's kind of my take on it right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also feel like when I step into a space here, there's kind of, and I'm the only Black woman in that space, I feel like, to be honest, an immediate insecurity and self-consciousness, and it makes me turn inside myself. And when I was in Israel, that wasn't there. And I think a lot of it has to do with whatever we experience here lives in our bodies, and when we go somewhere else, that thing doesn't exist. There's another thing, but that specific thing doesn't exist. And so there was a letting go of however I used to feel when I would step into a space and I would be able to just be more of myself, and feel like I could open up and be more vulnerable and not want to immediately hide myself. Yeah.
I'm curious too, and Shanice, I'm thinking specifically about you. I mean, we touched on being adaptable. Michaela was talking about that, and flexibility. But I know, Shanice, for you, you are unique in that you are kind of at different sectors of the field, right? And and I'm just curious as to how you go about being your authentic self, but in these different ways in the field. So from teaching, arts administration, performing, all of the different things that you're doing. So maybe first tell us what those things are, and then maybe share a little bit about how you're showing up as Shanice in all of those places.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So currently wearing a lot of different hats and in a lot of different spaces, but I freelance in the DC metro area. I work with a company that's based in New York as well. And I work full-time at Dance USA, and then I teach on faculty at City Dance Stream. So wearing a lot of different hats, but I think the good thing about that is that they intersect in various ways, and one role really influences the other, which allows me to kind of zoom out, as one of my friends says, and see like what are the dots and how do they connect, and what information can I pull from one role to the other to help, better that role, better myself in that role, and to also make sure that the people that I'm surrounded with, depending on where I am, how can I also help them also think about the different ways in which they're working throughout the field and how their work can influence the other. And I'm really just personally like in a practice of really trying to find and explore different ways of building a sustainable career and a sustainable practice. And not only just for myself, but also for the field in a larger like context. How do we really build a field that is sustainable, not only for us right now, but for the people that are coming after us? And I really think about my students. Like, I don't want them to have to deal with the things that we're dealing with right now. Like, things need to be better than what they are right now. So that's why I really try to like find ways of like, okay, how does one job influence the other? How do I take this nugget and plug it in over here? And I think it just helps me to be a better artist, a better human, that's really thinking about the care and putting the care first and not necessarily, fully about myself, which I think falls in line with being a Black woman. But I think that's the good part of being a Black woman, is that we do care so much, that we do want things to be better for the next person and not, fully just for ourselves. So.
Yeah, thank you. Sustainability. I just want to, pause there for a moment. Others might want to weigh in. No pressure, but you might.
I have a comment. Sorry, I was trying to hold it back. But it's more of a prompt. And yeah, just a comment. Like, I really think like sustainability is such a multifaceted goal, and it really requires the contributions and buy-in from a variety of stakeholders. And I find myself, and I'm curious, I'd love to hear other people's opinions, but I find myself all the time putting that on my shoulders. And your comment, Shanice, about like the fact that like, yes, like we are so caring, we don't have, I'm just wondering, I'm like reacting to that, like, wait, am I like doing that right now? Like, I take on sustainability, for example, of the organization. Like, that's on me. Like, we don't get a grant, that's on me. Student doesn't get accepted in school, that's on me. It's like this, but when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, the sustainability of practices, of efforts, of even the career potential of our students, like so many of the factors that inform that are in the hands and under the control of other people and institutions. So how and why is it that there's this notion, though, and this onus of sustainability that gets placed upon like us, when it really is this, I mean, the word industry even. So how many, stakeholder groups are involved in that? And so I've been really lately, I'll just say there's been a lot of things and a lot of time and effort that sometimes I feel like is pulling me from what I understand is my responsibility. But this conversation is kind of making me like reconsider that, because maybe it is this realization that no, actually, for this to be sustainable, I do need to be thinking about and talking to like those people over there and these people over here. And it's not just this oneness on like ourselves or our personal organization. So I'm just curious how other people reacted to that as well.
I think you bring up a good point, Kahina, that it is multifaceted, that it can't just be on us, and it shouldn't be, that we have to change the systems that really play a part in how we are sustainable. And I think that comes back to, who do we start the conversation with? And it really shouldn't just be up to us. Like, it shouldn't just be our jobs to do that. And I will like completely, raise my right hand and say that, like, it can't just be us. But how do we at least begin to start the conversation and stop to, as I tell my friends, get off the merry-go-round of like being in the same patterns, doing the same things, working in the same ways. What are the new ways in which we can work to really build something that we're proud of? I can't fully say that I'm proud of the dance field right now. Like, I can't fully, put myself forward and say that, because there's still so much work that we have to do. But because we won't get off the merry-go-round, it's like we're still stuck in this cycle. And it's like, what are we going to do? What questions do we ask? Are we asking the right questions? I think we just have a lot of work to do. But I know as a person within this field who is working, I can at least start to plant the seed here and plant the seed with my students and plant the seed with my network, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? Like, it can't just be me, and I'm going to tell you that right up front. So what are we going to do? And I think it really just begins with like that conversation, and really talking, seeing maybe we do need to talk to those people over there. We probably don't want to, and we probably shouldn't be the only person doing it. But I think it at least starts a new race, a new marathon of some sort.
Yes, I'm thinking about sustainability just from an artistic standpoint. As a choreographer, director of a company, it definitely takes a village for me. When I step out of a rehearsal, I am zapped. Like, my energy is gone. The creative process for me, it takes all of my being, physically, mentally. And so when I first started the TL, having to create, perform in the work, and also think about all the administrative work, it became a lot. I'll just leave it at that. So I really had to, and at the same time, I developed skills that I didn't think that I would be able to. So I was stretching myself, and I think at the forefront, that was a great stretch, because I am now able to know my strength, but also see strengths in other people and know, okay, I actually got my feet wet in this area. So I kind of know how it works, but you just do it better than me. And so there was a lot of humbling and letting go of certain areas that I had to let go of, because I just didn't have the strength to sustain and really go at the pace of where I was going as a choreographer and the opportunities that was presenting itself. So I really did have to find those people, the right people, and that takes time. So yeah, I think I've had that some of the administrative skills developed, but really the main skills that I've developed are humility, patience. Those two, I think, is something that really helps me as a leader in the dance world in my company.
Yeah, I just want to say, and also if you're Black, right? Like, wrapped in this conversation of sustainability is like resilience and all these other things, because you're not just trying to sustain, upstream or whatever the expression is, downstream, but you're going up while things are pouring down, while things are actively, systems are and structures and institutions are actively working against you. Right. Not always, but often. And so, yeah, sorry, I'm thinking, I'm like, yeah, it really, like, we're all saying these things. What's a common denominator here in these sustainability challenges? And that just came to my mind. Sorry. But yeah.
I'm thinking too about stakeholders. And Kahina, you threw out stakeholders, and then I thought about investors. And then I thought, who invests in you? Like, who are your investors? And Michaela started to get at this, right? That initially you were kind of doing, I love that, you know, I know what you're supposed to do, but like you could do a little bit better, which is great because it means you can help manage. So it's clear that, you know, you all didn't just arrive here. You didn't just show up. And Kahina opened with "I'm a daughter," and Michaela is speaking to the team of folks who have kind of come on to help you realize this vision and to be a part of it. And so I just wonder if anyone wants to take this time to talk about your investors. Who has invested in you to this point?
First, like I can say that my family have been a huge support. And also throughout my career, I've been introduced to people who just believed in what I was doing and were generous and wanted to support. And I remember specifically with one person who kind of made this really amazing connection for me. She said, someone did this for me, and so I'm going to do this for you. I want to pay it forward so that it's like continuing on this line of, I invest in you, you can invest in someone else. And so I feel like I've just encountered by chance, fate, whatever it is, that those people come into my life, even if it's just like for a one-time thing, being able to like give their thoughts, their support, just make a connect. Yeah, it's just kind of, it's happened that way. And because of that, I've been able to move forward, not because of anything that I'm doing. Whenever I try and make things happen, it never really works. So it's always because of kind of someone else saying like, you know what, you can do this thing, so let me help you. You don't feel like you have to do it alone and you're just out here flailing and trying to figure it out.
I just want to say I appreciate the question, Ronya, because I think that for many of, I think about my students, but also colleagues of mine or peers that are coming up. And the reality is the idea of investment and people pouring into you is just not something that I think socially is like accepted and conveyed. Well, in this country, at least, I think there's a lot of like the one, you know, the independent success story. And it's like, it's just so not true. If we think about like if you were to interview, right, I'm sure any successful individual and find out their narrative or journey along the way are supporters, is support. And we don't realize people that are coming behind us, they're actively making life-altering decisions based on that fallacy. They are electing to do things on their own that are maybe causing irreparable harm or damage because they think that's how it's been done. They are literally told this fable. I could, like, not to get too granular, but I'm thinking of a personal experience of mine, a colleague of mine, that was adamant about no support for her first home buying experience. No support. She had ample offers, right? Ample offers. And it was just, you know, she really, really wanted to do this on her own. And as she articulated the why, it came to me like, wow, she doesn't know that in many other cultures, across many other industries, you know, all kinds of backgrounds, that's a thing. And in fact, when it can't be a thing, there's usually a reason, but it's something I'm sure probably people would like to do. But it's misinformation. And so you just uplifting the question itself, first of all, like, thank you. I think that's really important. And I hope that it continues to be talked about. And then the last thing that I would just say is just in terms of responding to the question itself, and So investment is a bit of a trigger for me, not gonna lie, the actual word investment, because I think about someone wanting something like a return on the end of that investment. And I have very strong opinions about like art and just like the whole economic model behind it, and that it really needs to look a lot different because it puts some serious parameters, unfair parameters around what people can do around art. I think there's a beautiful, beautiful pureness that begins to get tampered with when people are looking for a return on their investment. But that being said, just for support's sake, absolutely. I mean, I can't even name just one. It's been like everybody, the person down the street, the family member, the student, the peer, you know, everyone, the dance teacher, very first dance teacher, everyone. So just to acknowledge what you're saying, that's really how it works. And anyone who said they got to where they are on their own is probably lying.
Agreed.
Amen. Amen. Sorry.
No?
I had to put that in space. But I can piggyback off of Kahina just a little bit, and thank you, Ronya, for raising the question and for putting that question in the space, because it really has me over here thinking like, who has invested in me? Like, because I can quickly think about all of the people I have invested in, but I'm really like trying to flip it. I'm like, okay, who's really like invested in not only me as like all of the things that I do, but me as a person, who's invested in me in that way. And when I think of it in that context, I really think of my family, my sister, my dad, my mom. Those people are, you know, those people that invest in Shanice, the person, the sister, the daughter, the friend. And there's other people that have like invest into my quote unquote career, but I'm really thinking about who's invested into Shanice, the person. But it also makes me think of what are the ways that I am giving back and investing into my communities, into my students. How do I show up for them? And what, thinking back, like what didn't I have, you know, say in high school and in undergrad, like where were the holes? And I think about the fact that I didn't have those people even at that time really investing into me. So how do I, now that I am older and I have mentees, how do I help to fill those holes for them? How do I make sure that they have someone that they feel they can lean on, that they feel that someone is investing into them, into who they are and the person that they are at the end of the day, and not just like building a career, but really like looking at and seeing the person in front of you, and giving back and investing in that way.
Yes. Of course, I gotta shout out my parents. They, you know, family. They've invested in me since I was a little girl, in so many different ways. But I also want to take a moment to shout out the TL collective, the dancers that dance in my company. Some of them have been with me now for going on 4 years, and really the beginning, I started it in 2016. So, you know, they started with me when I literally just had a vision and rented a studio and said, "Would you be in this piece?" Not offering anything, and they said yes, and they've continued to say yes. And I think really it starts with the foundation of the TL, why we even exist. TL standing for to love. And I really started the company not just because I wanted a contemporary dance company, but because I wanted to have invested relationships. I wanted to build a bond with people and with the dancers, because I felt a need as a performer, as a creator, to really have deep, authentic relationships. So we have that bond, and that's more important than any performance, any rehearsal, anything. And I think that is what keeps us investing in one another. And so I'm grateful for them, and I'm grateful for that investment from them, their hard work and commitment.
Yeah, this is rich. Thank you all for being so generous in your responses. Um, and I love the multifaceted nature of this conversation because it's so clear that for each of you, yes, dance, yes, art, yes, all the things, but personhood, love, authentic, deep relationships. What? Everyone in the world should try to operate this way. Um, we're going to pivot to the chat. There are a few questions, and I want to make some time for that. Don't feel that you have to, that everyone has to respond to every question. So kind of just as you're feeling led. So we have one question here. Did you see yourself here when you were younger? Um, yeah. Did you see yourself here when you were younger? I was going to combine it with another, but that deserves its own. Did you see yourself here when you were younger?
Absolutely not. Let me just break this down right now. I did not even want to choreograph in college, and that was that was I feel like pretty recent. And when I graduated, I joined a dance company, and I'm associating a lot of what I'm saying to choreography, but I think it's because you know, my purpose is really directly connected to what I do, dancing and choreographing, and so yeah, I didn't foresee this for my life. I knew that I've always enjoyed um, the arts, and in some way I would be connected to the arts, even if it was behind the scenes. And I actually enjoy working behind the scenes more than I enjoy being on stage and performing. Um, but yeah, I did not see this. I had the opportunity to create on a company that I was dancing with straight out of school, and that's when I realized, oh, I really enjoy this. And so it was a pivotal moment for me. And yeah, I put all my eggs in one basket and really started to focus on it. But no, I did not see myself being a choreographer.
I will also say no. I made a like last minute decision to pursue dance. Like in high school, I played golf like all the way through my childhood and was planning to go to college to play golf and study physical therapy. And then things just didn't feel right. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna let that go and I'm gonna try something else. I'm gonna take a chance. And I just started applying to schools with like dance programs instead. And I was dancing all the way through, but just made another decision and then knew I also wanted to be behind the scenes and be in the administrative part. So really starting then, like how do I really intersect being an artist and dancing and performing and making and also being on that administrative side. But yeah, no, I had a completely different plan. Completely different.
No pressure. Kahina and Candace, or we can move on to another question.
I mean, it's just going to be a continuation of the no train. I definitely did not see myself here. I mean, I always wanted to be a performer. And I think that was like all I saw myself doing. Being a Gaga teacher came out of nowhere. And again, because of those people who connected me or kind of experiences that I had along the way, ended up like, oh, I think this is actually something I really believe in and I want to do. And so that was unexpected, especially because I didn't want to teach. I didn't like the idea of teaching. I was like, absolutely not for me. No, no, no. But yeah, it's just like things come up along the way and you realize what I thought for myself isn't where I actually am. And then how do I say yes to those opportunities that come forward? So that I don't just have this like one track mind of what I think I'm supposed to be or how I think my life is supposed to go.
And Kahina, my guess is that you weren't, 4 years old going, one day I'll be the executive director of.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will echo the sentiment, so I didn't want to add because it's redundant. The one thing I will say though is that I did know, I knew whatever I ended up doing would be something that has to do with like achieving like just equal opportunities for people. I'm first generation American, so I had a very like interesting upbringing, or different, I should say. And just again, full transparency, there were I just didn't feel like it was fair that other people had opportunities and I didn't, for no reason. And that's something that continued. Like I spoke about this earlier, but I had opportunities that were literally told to my face I could not have because I was Black, specifically dark skinned and Black. So it instilled in me this desire to undo that. It didn't harbor, like it didn't make me like angry or anything, but it was like, okay, well, whatever it is that's making people feel like that's okay, I need to be working to help them to understand that that's not okay. And it doesn't have to be that way. And everyone can have a chance, at least a chance. Will everyone get the same experience? Maybe not, but a chance? I was like, I'm gonna spend my life doing that. So I do think they're connected in a bit.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question from the chat. This person says that they've noticed a specific word often used to describe successful Black women is inspirational. How do you feel about that? Does that come with any unfair pressure, or does it just come along with being a successful Black woman?
Good question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think a lot of the pressure that I feel, like I said earlier, I put on myself. But just in hearing that statement, in some ways, it's actually encouraging. I think that oftentimes, if you look at our history and society, Black woman is not necessarily associated with something so great as inspirational. So when I hear that, it is actually uplifting, and it causes me to want to rise to the occasion, or rise to the way someone views me as a Black woman. And so I find it empowering. I guess it depends on how you look at it, or where you are, maybe even your personality. But for me, I think that it causes me to want to rise to the occasion.
I don't know about a pressure, but kind of tied. I always found I think the word itself it's a little bit. It's not vague, like it has a definition, but I'm just saying, if I were a young woman looking up to someone who I felt was inspirational, like I don't know that it clearly delineates or gives a sense of like how you get there, or how they got there, or just what it means beyond like, that's like, when I think of inspiration, it's something that inspires you, right? Or like motivates you. But beyond that, I do think sometimes there's a not a pressure, but I think there's a need to what am I trying to say, Kahina? There's a connection, I think, in terms of people that are inspired by you. There's a connection to like deconstructing that a bit, and like, right, like not just being on this platform, but I always think about, again, not a pressure, but I think about, okay, this person is inspired. How might I offer more information, or really like pull the veil back, so that beyond this like really great feeling that they get, they have like some tools and some like information to navigate it in whatever way they choose to. So I think it's very much piggybacking off of what Michaela said. It's encouraging, motivating, and makes you feel like, wow, this is like, there's that pressure. But on top of that, I think, or to build on that, I think it's this kind of moves you to, at least for me, want to just break that down a bit. You know what I mean? At least for me, when I talk to young people, like pull back the curtain a bit, because it gives this little like, kind of like thing. And I just always try to like not shatter that, but just be very real so that other people can, it's just an open avenue for anyone who wants it.
Thank you. We have come upon that time, 6:30. I know that we could continue talking. So much more to discuss. But for those of you who joined us this evening, if you want to hear more from these lovely women, please join us for the Blacklight Summit, March 4th through 6th. Every single person you see here, each of them has a role, either performing or speaking, teaching. They're going to be engaged and you'll be able to engage with them further. I want to thank the Clarice, University of Maryland, of course. And again, Blacklight Summit, March 4th through 6th. We hope to see you there. Thank you. Good night.
Bye.